Is GMAT better or GRE? A lot of students ask me this question and they find it genuinely confusing to figure out which one is right for them. If you are one of those candidates, then this video is going to be super helpful for you. Over the last 7 years, I have helped several candidates get into their dream universities. I have seen them give either GMAT or GRE, I've seen them improve their scores, I have seen them switch from one exam to another, and I've seen them get into their dream colleges. And through their journeys and my personal journey, I have developed a detailed understanding of how both these exams work. In today's video, I am going to explain the structural differences between the two exams, which exam is better for whom, and the major misconceptions surrounding both these exams. Alright, so let's get this started. First, let's clear the biggest misconception. GMAT is for MBA, GRE is for Masters. Honestly, this is absolutely not true at all. Initially, few years ago, yes, this was true. But lately, in the last 5 years, a lot of things have changed. Almost every top college in the world, like you can see on my screen, now accepts both GMAT or GRE, and there is absolutely no bias. So let's say if you give GRE for MBA or MIM, then your profile is as competent as someone who has given the GMAT. Don't fall for this misconception and don't make a decision based on this. The second biggest misconception, GRE is easier than GMAT. Honestly, that's not true either. Each exam has its advantages and disadvantages, and based on your personal strengths and weaknesses, you need to decide which one is the right one for you. Now that we've cleared both the misconceptions, let's look at the structural differences between these two exams. Let's look at the cost. GMAT is slightly more expensive than GRE. Currently, the cost for GMAT is about $275, which is around 26,000 rupees, and at the same time, the cost for GRE is about 22,500. Now let's look at the score range. Now in case of GMAT, the score range is anywhere from 205 to 805, while in case of GRE, it has two sections, Cont and Verbal. Each section is from 130 to 170, meaning the total score on GRE is 340 with an additional essay writing section. Now let's look at the sections. Now GMAT has 3 sections, Cont, Verbal and Data Insights. GRE also has 3 sections, Cont, Verbal and Analytical Writing. Next, let's look at the duration of the exam. Now in case of GMAT, the duration of the exam is about 2 hours 15 minutes, while in case of GRE, the duration of the exam is 1 hour 58 minutes. Next, let's look at calculator usage. Now in case of GMAT, you can only use the calculator for the data insight section. However, in case of GRE, you can use the calculator throughout the Cont section. Next, let's look at the validity of these tests. Now in case of both GMAT and GRE, these tests are valid for the next 5 years. So if you're someone who's still in college and if you're planning to go for a Masters or MBA, you can easily take the GMAT or GRE right now because the scores would be valid for the next 5 years. Next, let's look at how many times you can retake this exam. Now the best part about GMAT and GRE is that you can take this exam multiple times, unlike CAT, which only happens once a year. Now in case of GMAT, you can take this exam 5 times in a year and total 8 times in a lifetime. In case of GRE, you can take this exam for 5 times in a year. However, there are no limits on the number of times you can take GRE in a lifetime. The only thing that you need to keep in mind here is that between 2 attempts of GMAT, you need to have a gap of 16 days, and in case of GRE, you need to have a gap of 21 days. One very important thing to note is that both these exams require for you to have a passport. A lot of students don't know about this and they end up booking the exam and wasting their money. Alright, so make sure that you have your passport before you book these exams. Now let's look at free school reports. Now in case of GMAT, you can send your score to 5 schools for free. While in case of GRE, you can send your scores to 4 schools for free. For the ones who don't know, GMAT and GRE actually charge you money to send scores to different universities. Like I mentioned here, you can send it for free to 5 schools in case of GMAT and 4 schools in case of GRE. But anything beyond that, you will actually have to pay to GMAT or GRE to send your scores. Now let's look at the at-home option. Now in case of both GMAT and GRE, they provide you with the at-home option, meaning you can give the exam at your own place. However, please note that a lot of universities abroad do not accept the GMAT or GRE taken from home. Most of them only accept these scores if you've taken them at the center. So please make sure to go through your university shortlist and check the requirements properly. Now let's look at the adaptivity. Now in case of GMAT, it is question adaptive. And in case of GRE, it is section adaptive. Now this is one of the most important factors to look at when you decide if you want to give GMAT or GRE. Now what do I mean by adaptive here? Now in case of both GMAT and GRE, both these exams are adaptive, meaning difficulty adjusts based on performance. Let's take an example. Now in case of an adaptive test, what happens is that if you solve one question correctly, then the next question is difficult. If you solve it incorrectly, then the next question is easier, right? So the test actually adapts to how you perform. Now, in case of GMAT, after every question, the test is kind of adapting to how you solve the previous question. But in case of GRE, it is only adapting from one section to another. Now, in case of GRE, there are total 4 sections, 2 cont and 2 verbal. Let's say if you solve the first section really well, then the next section would be difficult. But let's say if you don't do it well, right, then the next entire section would be easier. Alright, and this is extremely important to understand in depth, and I will again touch upon it at the end of this video. Now let's look at how both the exams are actually different, right? Now in case of GMAT, the cont is more logic and data interpretation heavy. But in case of GRE, the cont is more math intensive. At the same time, in case of GMAT, the verbal is more critical reasoning focused. While in case of GRE, the verbal is very vocabulary intensive. Now that you understand the structural differences between both the exams, let's figure out who should give the GMAT and who should give the GRE. Now, you should choose the GMAT if you're very strong with logic, if your structured reasoning skills are very strong, and very importantly, if you want to get into consulting or investment banking. A lot of times, top consulting firms and investment banks expect you to have a very good GMAT score, and it is a part of the selection criteria. Now, you should give the GRE if your vocabulary is very strong, if you don't face difficulty in memorizing a lot of words and their meanings, if you're fast at calculations and using formulas, and lastly, if you don't have a lot of time to prepare. Generally, I've seen a lot of engineers do really well in the GRE cont section. Also, one thing to note is that a lot of top university programs, especially in engineering and technology, generally only look at the cont score. So if you're someone who's applying to those universities, then maybe GRE is the right choice for you. Next, I want to talk about a very important difference between GMAT and GRE, which a lot of people don't know about. Now, like I mentioned before, both these tests are adaptive. But in case of GMAT, it's question adaptive, while in case of GRE, it's section adaptive. Meaning, in case of GMAT, if you do one question well, the next one will be difficult. While in case of GRE, cont and verbal are independent sections. Let's say if you don't do well on the cont section, the next cont section will be less difficult. But if you do well on the verbal section, then the next verbal section will be more difficult. They're both independent of each other, right? And also the adaptability is not from one question to another, but from one section to another. Now I'll explain the difference properly. Now in case of GMAT, it feels like climbing a mountain. Going from a 655 to 685 is tough. But going from a 685 to 705 is not the same. It's even more tough, and so on. While in case of GRE, it's like climbing the stairs. Obviously, going from a 325 to a 328 is difficult, but going from a 328 to 331 is not drastically more difficult as compared to GMAT. So what happens is, most of the times, most smart students end up getting a score anywhere from 655 to 685. Most of the students lie in this range, but then moving from a 685 to 705 becomes drastically difficult for them. While in case of GRE, that does not happen. If they work harder and if they practice more, then getting a higher score is slightly more possible because of the adaptive nature of both the tests. If you're someone who's targeting a very high score, you need to keep this in mind and understand really well the structure of both these exams. One very important advice that I would like to give all of you is that if you are unable to decide which one is the right exam for you, even after looking at all these factors, then all you need to do is give a mock exam for GMAT and give a mock exam for GRE. Now, if you do well with logic and let's say critical reasoning, automatically GMAT will feel easier. While if you're good at formulas and vocabulary, then GRE would feel easier. Once you experience the environment and the actual structures of both these exams, you will automatically be able to tell which one suits you more and which one feels more comfortable. And you can easily choose that one. A lot of times students ask me what is a good score on GMAT or GRE. Now in case of GMAT Focus Edition, a competitive score would be 655 plus. In case of GRE, a competitive score would be 325 plus. In case of GMAT Focus Edition, a very good score would be 685 plus. While in case of GRE, a very good score would be 330 plus. And an excellent score in case of GMAT Focus Edition would be 705. While in case of GRE, it would be 335 plus. Now obviously getting such a good score is very difficult for a lot of people, especially if you don't have a background in, let's say, logic, cont, etc. But let me tell you this. A lot of top universities lately have realized that GMAT and GRE are a very small part of the applications. And that's why a lot of top universities, especially in the US, in the UK, etc., are now offering GMAT waivers. If you want to understand how GMAT waivers exactly work, then you can check out this video where I've explained in detail how to opt for a GMAT waiver. Also, another alternative to GMAT waivers is alternative tests offered by universities themselves. A lot of times, universities have designed their own tests which you can give to get an entry into any of the programs, and these tests are much simpler than GMAT or GRE. We have helped a lot of candidates get into the world's best universities, sometimes with or without a GMAT or GRE score. If you're someone who needs help with your application, you can message my team on this WhatsApp number or schedule a call here and we will help you out. Alright, so that's all for today's video. If this video was helpful in any way, please make sure to like and subscribe.